Hello everybody, welcome back to the 5 Red Lights. My name's Aaron. Today I'm previewing the Portuguese Grand Prix, round 3 of the Formula 1 2021 Championship. It's time for the 5 Red Lights.
1 light, 2 lights, 3 lights, 4 lights, 5 lights, and it's go!
Alrighty then, before I dive into the preview of the Grand Prix of Portugal for 2021, I just want to take a quick second to encourage you to like the video if you enjoy it, to subscribe if you're new to the channel. I've checked my analytics and more than half of you who are watching these videos are not subscribed. What are you doing? Subscribe, show some love, because every little piece helps. Check out the other videos that I've put up. I've recently unboxed my Imola drive crate. It's reached 96 views, a whopping figure for this channel. Comfortably the most successful video I have put out so far. And also I'm putting together the driver of the month, so check out that video on this channel for April and see who came out on top in the vote for that. Enough of that, let's dive on in to the preview of the Grand Prix of Portugal. So far in 2021, we've seen a classic rivalry return. McLaren versus Ferrari. If you think of those two as rivals, you think of James Hunt versus Niki Lauda in 1976, of Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost, both at McLaren and then at McLaren and Ferrari. And there was also the classic rivalry between Mika Häkkinen and Michael Schumacher in the late 90s, the rivalry that I grew up with as a young F1 fan. And also you think of the last real time these two went head to head for a major championship position, especially a world championship. In 2008, Lewis Hamilton and Felipe Massa. The whole is that Gluck moment. Now over the last few years, both of these titans have fallen away from the sharp end of the Formula 1 grid, and it must be said that both of them have been there before. Ferrari, of course, famously went without a driver's title from 1979 to the year 2000, while McLaren actually went 50 races without a win in the 90s after Ayrton Senna left, before David Coulthard won the 97 Australian Grand Prix. Also, neither team have won a world championship of any description since 2008, McLaren taking the driver's title with Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari taking the constructor's crown that year with Massa and Raikkonen behind the wheel. Now, Ferrari did get back to winning ways in more recent years, but they stumbled at the crunch point in the championship battle in 2017 and 2018. And now they're recovering from their engine penalty of last season, and they have two young chargers behind the wheel. And things are looking a lot sweeter for the Maranello team. McLaren, on the other hand, they have suffered big time since 2014. Their move away from Mercedes power proved ill-fated, and their star may have never shone less brightly than it seemed to in 2018. But a change in management with Zak Brown heading up the company, he's brought consistent steps back to the front after appointing Andreas Seidl as team boss. Interestingly though, in 2021, both teams back on the rise. At the moment, they're the only two teams to have scored with both cars in both races so far, leaving them third and fourth in the Constructors' Championship. For now though, both are hot on the heels of Mercedes and Red Bull in that respect, but I don't expect that to remain the case for the whole season. Crucially though, they're already a chunk clear of AlphaTauri, who have only got 8 points. Yes, that's down to McLaren and Ferrari being consistent, but it's also largely down to the amount of points that AlphaTauri have squandered from excellent positions. Gasly really should have been able to convert at least one of those two P5 starts into a position 5 finish or higher. And that car really is a threat to McLaren and Ferrari. But for now though, this is a classic rival that can be completely reignited. Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris spearheading each team's attack on the other. It just feels like yesteryear and the Häkkinen and Schumacher era where they were going at it hammer and tongs week in, week out. But don't forget the ex-Red Bull stablemates in Carlos Sainz and Daniel Ricciardo, who are still adjusting to their new machinery, and perhaps whoever adapts fastest will help swing the battle in their team's favour. But who's coming out on top in Portimao? If we think back to the last race there in 2020, the first race there, of course, Charles Leclerc pulled out a sublime P4 both on the grid and in the race. But McLaren led in the early stages. So both teams have got previous success around that circuit. For me, though, the MCL 35M looks a beast. Lando Norris was absolutely on another planet in that midfield battle in Imola. I think it's got a bit of an edge over Ferrari in race pace, whereas Charles has been delivering on the qualifying front. That said, of course, Lando would have been ahead of Charles had his track limits, had his car not gone over track limits in Imola. And if we consider the long main straight in Algarve and the power of the Mercedes engine against the Ferrari engine, I think McLaren will have enough, even if Charles manages to work some magic on the Saturday. But what I'm really looking forward to is two old rivals in a updated form going toe to toe again for a really significant chunk of the championship and a really significant position in the championship as well. The third and fourth spot will be really hotly contested, and if AlphaTauri get involved, that could be a real problem for those two teams. They've got to keep pushing and keep AlphaTauri, keep them at arm's length as much as possible. Who comes out on top in Portimao? Let's find out at the weekend. Of course, we've got the midfield battle, and that is going to be as hotly contested as ever, but really the big story is at the front, which is where it should be. I mean, this is what we've wanted for a couple of years now. We wanted a proper fight at the front. We almost got it with Ferrari and Mercedes in 17 and 18, but we really do have it now. So far, it's 1-1 in the battle between Max and Lewis. Both have got a pole position, both have got a victory. And you can easily justify a claim that both have thrown away a victory with an error in the race. So Max exceeding track limits in Bahrain and having to give the place back, while Lewis slid off pretty pathetically at Tosa whilst chasing Max. The pair were simply in a class of their own. They were just outstanding in the wet weather phase in Imola, and they were in other races too where it's been wet. They have just simply been head and shoulders above anybody else, and their pace was testament to that. They just demonstrated unbelievable pace compared to even Leclerc in third in the Ferrari. If you think back to last year, Lewis was metronomic in Portugal once he got going, although Bottas ran him close in qualifying and didn't quite get the pole position. But he did take the lead early on after Sainz had briefly led too. But then once Lewis got going, there was no stopping him. He just went on and on and on, and he went on to break Michael Schumacher's win record in the process. Of course, pole position in Portimao would be his 100th pole position in Formula 1, an outstanding accomplishment should he achieve it. And if he does, he will also be seeking win number 97 as he edges closer and closer to 100 on that front too. Max, on the other hand, will still be flying high off the back of his first win at an Italian racetrack in Formula 1. The Red Bull has looked faster in qualifying, and we could definitely see Max take another pole position, but never ever discount Lewis. Whether he could hang on to track position against the Mercedes would be another story. The power of the DRS at Portimao was really big last season, and the Mercedes is better over a race run than it is over a single lap. Another element to consider will be the tyres. Obviously, they're heavier this year. We've got the C1, the C2 and the C3. And obviously, we went to Portimao at the end of October in 2020. So going at the start of May in 2021, the climatic conditions could be very different. It was cooler. It rained a little bit at the start. It was slippery on the surface. So how's that going to affect things? That is going to be very interesting. Also, track limits. We saw a number of laps be deleted last season on the exit of turn 1. I think there's a couple of other corners there as well that will be probably monitored for track limits. Everyone's favourite thing about Formula One. But what of their two teammates, Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez? Both are searching for some form after an up and down start to the year. Bottas could have challenged for the win in Bahrain, while Sergio really should have been up there as well had he not stopped on the formation lap. For me, Perez should have scored big in Imola, but he failed to score at all, while Bottas' weekend simply unravelled and ended with that spectacular crash with George Russell. Both will be desperate to take victory and throw their helmet into the ring for title contention. With Max and Lewis driving the way they are at the moment, if Valtteri and Sergio have serious title aspirations, they must strike this weekend in Portugal or confront the looming truth that they will need to support their teammate in a head-to-head battle in the title. Very early to say that, I know, but it's quickly heading that way, especially for Bottas, and that could be critical as to whether he keeps his seat at Mercedes or not. Perez probably knows that he will need to play back up to Max at some point, but he will want to get a win on the board before that becomes the case. Who's coming out on top? Well, you'll have to wait and see what I think in my predictions at the end of this video. Every race is a big race, but it's sometimes a bigger race for some than others. And it's a big race this weekend for AlphaTauri. Now, I mentioned earlier that they've squandered so many points already. If you look at the tail of the tape so far, 5th place in qualifying for Gasly in Bahrain. They should have got Yuki Tsunoda through as well into Q3, and they could have had both cars up there. Yuki did score points. I think he got 9th in the opening race, but Gasly damaged his front wing and then later on retired. He repeated his qualifying trick in Imola, 5th place on the grid, while Yuki Tsunoda crashed in Q1 and started at the back. They then took the bizarre decision to put Gasly on wet tyres and left him out there for seemingly ever, while Yuki made his way through. More points thrown in the bin, especially given that Yuki got up to 9th or maybe 8th and then spun at the restart. I mean, it is a bit of a bedding ground for young Red Bull talent, but for me, Yuki just needs to just relax a little bit. He doesn't need to be making those sort of mistakes, because that's going to really come back to bite him very quickly in the Red Bull program. If he keeps it neat and tidy this weekend and has a very smooth run, he'll be happy. And so will Helmut Marko. Maybe. But for Gasly, it's a big weekend. He needs to deliver for AlphaTauri, and they need to deliver for him. They got 7th place after Stroll's penalty in Imola, which is, small potatoes in terms of what they could have really achieved. That car could have been on the podium. I mean, had they got things right on the strategy and started on the Inters, Gasly could have been getting ahead of Leclerc and perhaps even holding off Norris. So, a wasted opportunity for AlphaTauri. They must score some solid points in Portimao, otherwise they risk being dragged into the mire with Aston Martin and Alpine in the bottom half of the midfield in terms of the Constructors' Championship order. So big race weekend for AlphaTauri. It's also a big race weekend for George Russell, because he needs to bounce back from the accident with Valtteri Bottas in Imola. He was driving so well. He got out of Q1 alongside his teammate Nicholas Latifi, and he actually got 12th on the grid. He was only a 10th off of Q3, which is unbelievable for a Williams. He did say pre-season that the Williams is going to be good at some tracks and a bit rubbish at the others. I'm not sure which way it's going to be. It's a bit of a wind-sensitive car, and the Algarve circuit is on the coast, so it tends to get a bit windy on the coast. It might be a tough weekend for Williams, but we'll wait and see. George has the talent. He could pull something out of the bag, and I do expect him to be in Q2 and getting ahead of someone perhaps that car shouldn't be. But how he responds, how he delivers his weekend from the accident and the aftermath in the media is really critical to George's perception from others. how he's viewed will be very influential on how successful he is in getting that Mercedes drive. And it's a big weekend for the driver that George crashed with in Imola, Valtteri Bottas. Bottas should never have been in that position, really. He should have been up the front with Hamilton and Verstappen. If not on their heels, he should have been in third place. Because that car, okay, it's not as good as it was in 2020, but he should still be there. 8th in qualifying, then running 9th and 10th in the race. Even Toto was on the radio to him. Come on, Valtteri. So, really, Valtteri, you need to pull your finger out and, double those espressos, because he's very quickly heading, like I said earlier, to being a support act for Lewis Hamilton. And we all know that Valtteri wants to win the World Championship, but he doesn't want to go the Nico Rosberg route in terms of creating that needle between him and Lewis. And I think if he did, that would be the end of his Mercedes contract, because Mercedes are very happy with the ambiance within the team that Valtteri has helped create. But it's a big weekend for him. He needs to score big. He needs to show that he is in the title fight, and that all starts with either being very close to Hamilton and Verstappen or beating them. All right, it is prediction time. Let's start with pole position. Now, I've tipped Max Verstappen for pole position in the opening 2 rounds, and it's going to go to Lewis Hamilton this time. He's going to score his 100th pole position in Portimao, the same venue where he broke the win record of Michael Schumacher in 2020. And the top 3 in qualifying is going to be a front row of Lewis Hamilton. Alongside him is Max Verstappen. And in third place, Charles Leclerc. He pulled out all the stops in Portimao in 2020. Got a 4th place on the grid with a Ferrari that was, let's face it, a bit rubbish. The car is a much better evolution and a much stronger package this season. Charles Leclerc is going to be 3rd on the grid. He's going to out-qualify both Bottas and Perez, who will probably end up 4th and 5th. But then, what about the McLarens? Norris is on a charge at the moment. Where is he going to end up? And what about the AlphaTauris? So it's going to be super competitive behind those front 2 of Hamilton and Verstappen, who I think will be there on their own. Moving on to the race, the winner, Lewis Hamilton. He's going to bounce back from that tricky weekend in Imola. Well, not the tricky weekend, the tricky race. And we've seen it time and time again. He has a bad weekend. He makes a mistake. He gets beaten. What does he do? He comes out and he wins the next 2 or 3 races on the spin. This is what he's going to do. He's going to turn up and he's going to win the race. He's going to beat Verstappen in another straight fight. It's going to be fun because the DRS is powerful and we're going to see a lot of wheel-to-wheel action. I don't think he's going to lead the whole thing, but I think he's going to come out on top. It's going to be a real indication. It's a chance for Hamilton to put down a marker as well against Verstappen. Verstappen's got one on him now at the start in Imola. And of course, Lewis kind of mugged Verstappen in Bahrain with the strategy, with the help of Mercedes. That was a race they should never have won. But then Verstappen maybe shouldn't have won the Imola race because he was starting 3rd and Hamilton from pole position should have had turn 1 covered. That said, Portimao is a new race. Hamilton is going to win the race. Verstappen's going to come 2nd. Bottas is going to make his way through for his 2nd podium of the year. Now, of course, I did tip Perez for podium glory in Bahrain. And that didn't work out. And again in Imola. And that aged really well. So, Sergio, I'm going to keep you off the podium for now because I think I'm a bit of a bad luck charm for you. So, maybe I'll bring Bottas some good luck by putting him on the podium. Let's wait and see. And a bold prediction. Now, track limits, it's everyone's favourite thing about Formula 1, isn't it? We love track limits. So, 5 drivers, at least 5 drivers, will have qualifying laps deleted for exceeding track limits during qualifying. So that includes Q1, Q2 and Q3. At least 5 different drivers. Now, I won't count it if it's the same driver twice. So it has to be 5 different drivers for that one to be correct, I suppose. Obviously, we don't want anyone exceeding track limits. I mean, it would be better if we didn't have track limits, if they just, gravel or something. There must be a better way to do it. But for now, that's what we've got. So, that drivers are going to take every inch they can get. So let's hope that they don't push it too far. Maybe. But yeah, my bold prediction is at least 5 drivers have qualifying laps deleted for exceeding track limits. Well, that is the end of my Grand Prix of Portugal preview. Thank you so much for watching. If you've watched all the way through, let me know who you think is going to win the race in the comments down below. Check out my Drive Crate unboxing of the Imola month edition if you haven't already. I'll leave a link to it probably somewhere a bit earlier in the video where I mentioned it at the start. And all that's left to say is thank you for watching. Enjoy the racing this weekend, and I will see you when the 5 red lights go out on the Portuguese Grand Prix. My name's Aaron. This has been the 5 red lights. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.